Hey everyone, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-Jitsu. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to do a video today on terminology, various definitions of words that we use, terms that we use. I'm trying to see how I can do this without having a training partner because I want to make the video a little quicker because you know how long I can go sometimes, right? So let's kind of start off with some basic concepts. So what is self-defense? So self-defense, as we call it, is the jiu-jitsu that you do, and it could be in any art. It's an art that's designed to help you deal with an ordinary situation, an ordinary attack, assault, something that happens in real life. Bullying often has to do with somebody kind of grabbing you and trying to take you somewhere, trying to abduct you, right? Somebody grab you by the wrist, come with me. Grab you by the around the torso, come with me. Or get over here, get in this car, you know, that type of thing. And having to learn how to base and how to deal with how to get out when somebody tries to headlock you. Or it could be just a simple brawl in school, right? Some kid just grabs you around your head. How do you deal with that? How do you get out of that situation? How do you get when somebody grabs you? How do you get when somebody grabs your hair, grabs your clothing, grabs your any body part and grabs you? And how do you get yourself out of that situation? That is self-defense. Now you can take it up a level and you can get into the whole thing about when somebody takes you down, right? When they take you down, what do you do from there? You know, are they in your guard? So that's another word. Guard is a very common word. We all know it. The terminology we do know. It's where you have your opponent inside your legs, right? Your legs are crossed like this. They're inside of your legs and you're on your back. That's a guard. You know, in self-defense, how to defend from guard, how to defend when somebody's mounted on you. Now, what's a mount? A mount is where somebody is sitting on top of your torso with their knees on the ground and they're just sitting right on top of you. Right? And that's where they can hit you and do all that kind of stuff from there. How to get out of that. That's self-defense. Traditional versus sport. Traditional jiu-jitsu uses self-defense as its core. Sport jiu-jitsu does not. Sport jiu-jitsu has at its core competition. Now, what are some other terms that we use? Well, we know what a strike is, right? Strike is a punch, a kick, whatever. Closing the distance. What does closing the distance mean? Well, in traditional jiu-jitsu and in self-defense in general, you have 3 zones of operation where you're safe in 2 of them and you're in danger in 1 of them. And typically what you do is what we do is we teach 2 arms lengths. So if you're on that side, you're facing me, you extend your arm, I extend my arm, that's 2 arms lengths distance, and that is the green zone. That's safe. However, when we're only 1 arm's length apart or less than 2, but not right up on them, that's what we call the red zone. That's where if your opponent, without moving anything, can just reach his leg out and touch you as if to kick you, or reach his hand out to touch you as if to hit you, that's a red zone. Because it's red for me because he can strike me. It's also red for him because I can strike him, right? So a red zone for you is also a red zone for your opponent. Now, one opponent may be more comfortable in that zone versus you, but it doesn't matter. It's still a red zone. Everybody can get lucky, right? And then the other green zone would be when you're right up on them. You know, we tell kids when you hug the other kid, you know, then that's a clinch, right? They understand clinch, but you know, it's easy to teach them hug, right? Because all kids like to hug people, right? So they hug and then they know, then that's what you teach them. You condition them to learn that. So now striking. Okay, well, striking, punch, kick, whatever, you know, it could be a striking art or a grappling art, or a traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu class is neither striking nor grappling because we do both, right? It's just Jiu-Jitsu. But you have a lot of people who do their MMA training. They go specifically to train grappling, right? Groundwork, they call it. They'll go to another place to do takedowns, whether it be through wrestling or judo. And they'll go to another place to do striking, whether it be Muay Thai, MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, or boxing, right? Those are your typical arts. And so what people do is they do a lot of training in each of those 3 typical disciplines. The groundwork, the takedowns, and the stand-up, as we call it. It's another term. Stand-up art, grappling art, takedown art. And with traditional jiu-jitsu, we try to just kind of have all of it in there. Now, granted, we limit ourselves in which strikes we do. We limit ourselves in which takedowns we do. And then we have, you know, we fight on the ground and we do what we need to do. So, cross-side. Cross-side, across, you know, basically is when your opponent is flat in the back and you're chest to chest on them, laying down. I've heard it called side control, which makes perfect sense. I've heard it called side mount, which to me it's not, because it's not a mount. You know, because what I defined a mount earlier. You're sitting down and you have your two knees on. Now, if your person turns to the side, you're mounted on your partner, partner turns to their side to escape, and you pop up and you put one knee up and one knee down, right? The knee down is behind their back, the knee up is in front of them. That's what we call side mount. Now, some people will call that technical mount. So you might know it either way. I'm thinking you more likely know it as technical mount. For us, side mount is more descriptive, so that's why we use side mount. Technical mount, it's like, is it technically a mount or is it a technical mount as opposed to not so technical? I don't know, but that's what I've heard, technical mount. So if you know it as technical mount and you hear in our videos side mount, then you know side mount equals technical mount. Cross side equals side control, or for some other people, side mount. I think I've heard Henner Gracie call side control side mount. Mount is good, mount we all know. Seat belt, right? That's where you actually have their back and you have your hooks in and you have one hand over the shoulder, one hand under the armpit, and you're locking onto your opponent this way from the back. I've heard some people call it backpack position. I've heard some people call it back mount position. I guess backpack and seatbelt are equally descriptive. Back mount, I guess. Back mount could be with your opponent face down on their belly and you sitting on them as if you're mounted. But this time you're looking at their back instead of them flipped over, and that's mount, right? Front mount, back mount. Nobody ever says front mount. So a person is belly down and you're sitting on top of them. That could be a back mount. We call it worst position, because it's the worst place you can be, right? Worst place for that guy to be. For the guy on top, that's really best position. So we have best position and worst position, and that's I don't think I've ever heard anybody else call it that. I don't know what I can't really think of what anybody's called it, because a lot of schools don't use that position at all. I can't tell you how many black belts I've come across who don't know how to get out of that. They kind of think to themselves, they're like, you know, and they'll try something, and maybe half the time it's going to be right, but half the time it's not, which means they don't really have a way to get out of it. I mean, they're just kind of improvising at that point. So when you play guard, somebody who plays guard is the person who's on their back with the legs around the opponent and then trying to control the neck and the arm. That's playing guard. Or you could grab sleeves. A lot of people grab sleeves, or grab wrists. Shoulder lock that goes here. That's called the Americana. You know, the thing is, we have Sensei Dean, our studio judo guy, and he's got the Japanese name for everything. Which kind of then leads me to believe that if judo has ancient names of all the positions that we do, chances are what we do is judo. No! You know, a lot of our judo friends who watch our channel will come on and they'll like to correct us and say, you know, this is, you know, really Kodokan Judo, or the one that I hear a lot is Kosen Judo, which prior to the YouTube channel and prior to doing the video with Sensei Dean, I never heard of Kosen Judo. I know it exists, but you never ever hear it. Somebody told me that today's Kosen Judo really is more a copycat of sport jiu-jitsu. So we got guard, we got the Americana. Now, the shoulder lock going in this direction where they lock my shoulder is called a Kimura. Why is it called a Kimura? Well, because Masahiko Kimura, that was his submission, his favorite submission, and that's the one I think he broke Elio Gracie's arm with it. Not sure. As far as the Americana, I think that's called a key lock. That the American catch wrestlers would often do. So I think that's where the Brazilians started calling it Americana. There's also rear naked choke, which some Brazilians will call mata-leão, which is lion killer. And I've heard American people call it the lion killer. That's where I first heard the term. I always thought of it as a rear naked choke. But when I was at Ken Gabrielson's school, they all called it lion kill. And also there's one called an Ezekiel, which is a sleeve choke where, you know, you're wearing a sleeve here and then you put his head right here. Your arm is under, grab his sleeve and you come through here, right? There's a couple of ways to do it, you know. It's called an Ezekiel, not an easy kill. Not all this time. For many years, I thought it was easy kill, but it's actually named after a person, Ezekiel. who I guess is another Brazilian. De La Riva. De La Riva is a type of open guard where you loop your leg over the outside edge and you bring your foot inside of your opponent's thigh, I guess inside where his hamstring is. That was invented, more like made famous in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by Ricardo De La Riva. De La Riva. I think it's De La Riva. And so that's a very common move done today. And a lot of other types of techniques kind of came out from that. I think the Berimbolo, that's when it came out from that. You know, a lot of stuff you can kind of just, if you hear something in Jiu-Jitsu that you're not quite familiar with, you can go and Google it and you can find out what it is. But as far as combat Jiu-Jitsu terms, those pretty much are it, you know, that we've gone over. A lot of those, like the Berimbolo, De La Riva, we don't really do them, but you're still going to have to know what they are at some point. And what choke's a choke. Choke can be with a gi on, without a gi on, it doesn't matter. Arm bar, arm lock, same thing. You're locking the elbow joint. You have wrist locks, you have shoulder locks. So the Americana could be a shoulder lock, the Kimura could be a shoulder lock. You have cranks. A crank is on your neck typically, and it's something that doesn't maybe pass you out. Like a choke is going to block, is going to halt the blood flow and stop the flow of blood on your neck, thereby making you pass out, right? That's your brain's defense mechanism is when it runs out of a flow of oxygen, it shuts down momentarily until the choke is relieved, then you wake back up. Now a neck crank though is set to do something like this to the neck, where, you know, it's just, you know, you twist it too much or you bend it in a certain way. That's a neck crank. You know, a lock, going back to the arm, or a lock and a bar is the same thing for the arm at least. An arm bar and an arm lock is the same thing. Either way, you got the arm locked. Either way, it's a potentially dangerous thing. You have foot locks, but we don't call them foot bars. Wrist locks, we don't call it wrist bar. It's only for the arm that we call it an arm bar, arm lock. What else? I mean, we have takedowns, you know, takedowns is just how to get somebody down into the ground. Oh, a break fall. Break fall is what we do in a warm-up class where you sit down and you keep your chin down and your head off the ground and you hit the mat to get your body used to falling so that you don't get hurt when you fall. Because one of the biggest problems of self-defense or in an altercation is the ground will hit harder than anybody can punch you. And if somebody takes you down and you get taken down and you don't know how to fall, you will get hurt and you could potentially get knocked out. I hope that kind of helped. You know, those are a lot of definitions that were just really off the top of my head. There may be a few others that you may be wondering about. Oh, north-south position. That's where you're on your back and your opponent has got his chest over your head and he's got control of your torso and your hips. Sometimes they're pinching your head between their knees, so you can't turn your head either way. That's one way. Knee on belly. Knee on belly is a position where it's related to cross side, where they pop up and put a knee right across your chest or your abdomen, and it's meant to hold you down and it's meant to take some of your air out. It's a position you need to escape from. You can't stay there for very long. And we have Kesa. Kesa is a scarf hold, and Kesa is really just a Japanese term. I'm not sure what they called it in Jiu-Jitsu. Kesa, we also have modified Kesa. Modified Kesa, instead of around the neck, you're around the hip, and it's like a cross side, but your baseball slide out. Your legs are sitting out like a baseball slide. Kesa around the neck, modified Kesa around the hip. Half guard, right? You have quarter guard, half guard, full guard. So a half guard is where the opponent, you're trying to get around his guard, you're trying to pass his guard, but he's able to grasp one of your legs and grasp it above the knee, so on your thigh. That's a half guard. But if you're able to pass your knee through, so the only thing he really has is your calf area on your leg, and that means he only has your ankle. That's what we call a quarter guard. On the other hand, you know, let's say you're mounted on him. You know, you get to the quarter guard, you get your knee out, and you go and mount him. You now have what we call a three-quarter mount. And your opponent has underneath, he's, I don't know, is that quarter mount? Quarter guard, whatever. As opposed to full guard. Full guard is where you have both knees between you and your opponent. So you could have an open guard where your legs are not closed, they'd be open, or you could have a closed guard. where your legs are fully wrapped around and closed. So those are the major terminologies that we'll teach in our sessions. When you watch our videos, you may hear some stuff that you're not necessarily familiar with, especially if you're a white belt. But don't be daunted by that. Don't really get hung up on the definitions and the sayings, because you will pick it up over time. It's not really all that big a deal. So hopefully that helps you. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and comment below. Take care. Happy training. Bye.